Hello again, and thanks for tuning in. I saw a report about Irish tourism today, and it said that Irish tourism is down 25% from January 2024 to January 2025. And this made me think of the last time I was having a discussion with my wife about her going across to Dublin for a weekend with our daughter. And we both kind of thought, well, yeah, it is expensive. It is. It's normally a nice place for them to go. They like going to places like the Titanic Museum and all of that type of stuff when they're over there, which is all good. But more recently, the question of safety came up, and we had a discussion about it, and she decided not to go. And I think this feeds in perfectly to, not just Dublin, but to places like London. How specifically the effects of mass migration and what the effects of mass migration have on these types of cities, particularly European cities. And what I'm going to do now, in the background, I'm just going to play you some short clips of things I found on X, things I found on YouTube. And these really go to highlight the issues surrounding, some of the issues surrounding mass migration, and what a problem it is for the authorities, the governments in charge, to actually deal with. Because these problems are large, difficult to cope with, and at the moment there doesn't seem like there's any real answers involved. Okay, so first up here, what we're going to talk about is just numbers. So mass migration by numbers. Ireland's population has surged in recent years. Record levels of immigration. In 2023 alone, net migration reached over 77,000, the highest in its modern history. And in addition to that, a significant portion of that increase comes from outside of the EU, looking at places like Africa, the Middle East, South Asia. Those types of places. Certainly not, EU or, what we would describe as European civilization, if you like. Now, it's not just skilled workers either. Ireland has seen a massive influx of asylum seekers, many of whom arrive without any documentation. And, Ireland does have, like the UK, a very, very generous welfare system. And, of course, once somebody arrives and they experience this welfare system, then they often stay permanently. Because that's a sensible move on their behalf. They've arrived here, they quite like the look of the place, they think, oh, I could make a life here, and this government here, they're giving me money, and so I'm going to stay here for a while. And in addition to that, just looking at housing, public services, just generally the services that people would use. If you live in Ireland, you already know that the housing market is a bit of a disaster, a bit like the UK's housing market. You've got rents going up, first-time buyers being priced out, just generally the slowing, like it's in quicksand of the housing market, because obviously in these types of conditions the house prices are up, so you get less sales. But yet, despite this ongoing housing crisis, as I say, high rents, first-time buyers not really being able to get on the ladder at all, the government is bringing in tens of thousands of new arrivals every year. And of course, these people need some levels of social housing. Some don't. Some are wealthy migrants, if you like, and they'll just go off and buy a house or rent a place and just to do what they're doing. But many of those migrants need social housing. And of course, social housing is at a premium. So who bears the brunt of this? Well, it's the working class. So the working class are being pushed further down the queue. Meanwhile, the taxpayers footing the bill for emergency accommodations, hotels and provision centres, which are not popular with the public. And of course, what we're also talking about here, we're talking about hospitals, GP waiting lists, school places, the list goes on and on and on. The public services required to handle a population, once the population increases, those public services have to move to accommodate this. And often what you'll see in the United Kingdom and what you're seeing in Ireland is that there's no change. The investment will stay the same, or the politicians will come out and say, oh, well, we're going to increase the investment here. But of course, every year inflation is keeping pace with all of this, so any increases are just eaten up with inflation. And so what you've got is a state where more people are coming in and there's not enough services to go around. Now, on the issue of crime, social cohesion, the media often doesn't like to talk about these issues like crime and social cohesion because this does tend to inflame tensions all across Europe. So in Europe, mass migration has led to rising crime rates, ethnic ghettos, and general social unrest, and this has all been proved over time in many statistics. You don't really need numbers to understand that. I think everyone has eyes and they have a brain and they can see exactly what's happening. And essentially, Ireland is now going down the same path as Europe. Particularly in Dublin, there's been an increase in reports of violent crime, antisocial behaviour. Gang-related violence is also on the increase, and this is often linked to foreign nationals. And in addition, there was some riots last year sparked by a violent knife attack involving a foreign national. So quite rightly, the people of Ireland are asking, why should Irish citizens feel unsafe in their own country? Why should they do that? What is the purpose of this? Why are we importing problems that other European countries are already struggling with? There's already a template for this all across Europe. And the Irish people have to be asking these questions. Why are we doing it as well when we can see the problems already happening all over Europe? And of course, all this does is lead us back to the government. Now, do the government have an elite agenda? I don't know. We wouldn't know because it'd be an elite agenda. But what are the governments doing? Why is it happening? Who's benefiting? Well, the government benefits and global elites benefit. The Irish government, like many others in the West, has signed up for an open borders policy dictated by the European Union. They frame mass migration as enrichment, cultural enrichment, some of which you're seeing on the screen here, while ignoring the real-life consequences for ordinary citizens. And let's not forget that big businesses does like cheap labour. The more migrants that come over, the easier it is to suppress wages and keep working class people dependent on government handouts. And so the cycle continues. Who bears the brunt of this? In social housing, in services, in just general, working class jobs. It's the working class people that always get pushed out. But yet it's those same people that get sent off for war when it's time to go to war. And are you allowed to actually criticise this? Are you allowed to stand up and say, I don't like this? Well, you know what they're going to be smearing you with immediately. It's going to be racist, far right. Despite the fact that everyday people feel this way. It's got nothing to do with racism and it's got nothing to do with politics. If you're looking at the area in which you grew up and you were born, and you see that that area is being changed beyond all belief into something that you don't recognise, and the culture is changing, the society is becoming more low trust, there's higher crime, higher rates of violent crime, and all other types of despicable crime goes on, then is it right to call that person a racist or a far-right person for saying, we never voted for this, we don't want this, this isn't what we want? And at some point, either the governments are going to have to listen, or the system's going to break in some way. And I don't know what's going to happen. But either way, I feel quite sorry for the people in Ireland. Such a historical country, such a great country to be in, beautiful scenery, people, funny people, Guinness, the crack, all of that, is brilliant. And it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing to watch a country being demographically changed when most of the people in that country don't want it. Thanks for listening, I appreciate it.